the 1st of August 2025, and I done a video there on the migration thing, and when I upload it I may be banned for a week or two, I don't know. So it's August time, and one of the things I'd like to do when it's holiday time is do a few on science. I don't know, do you want ones on science? Mightn't be. There might be some of my subscribers, some of them are smart enough. If you think you'd be able to handle, like, you don't have to understand it, you just have to kind of marvel at it, and marvel at the old book telling to you, what's still the case, there's still the wonder grew, and you'll have a bit of fun with the science. It'll be Einstein sort of stuff, if you want me to do it, say so. Now, in case I'm banned anyway, I want to deal with this video on the renewable energy. Coughlin's Tom, who's a rip-roaring Sinn Féin supporter, mad rip-roaring Trotskyite, can't wait to get rid of all our constitution and have a police state, essentially, which we have nearly at the minute, but he wants it even more. And people like me are in the way, and Donald Trump has him freaked out, can't sleep at night over Trump. So anyway, he says this, and I need to respond to this, but otherwise also about the wind energy. It's my job to get you to understand how the scam works. Val, the biggest offshore energy in the state, is well on its way to producing the bulk of power for the whole of Ireland. Now, first of all, he's lying, but it mightn't be a lie. He could be a drug addict, or there's people with an over-vivid imagination, and because you cannot put electricity into a bag, many dimwit people who are intellectually challenged, never did maths or anything or built at them, believe this stuff. There's something about electricity. I think that it's like magic. You know, the way a child goes to a magician and to think this is true. You know, there's people who watch the movies and think it's not true. So anyway, this is what he said. It's well on its way, but you notice it hasn't done it yet. And this is the thing with renewable energy. It's always going to happen next week. Never happened the week before. It's unbelievable. Like, there's a person called an actuary in insurance, and they work out the real risk to the company. Well, you know, with this kind of thinking, with Coughlin's Tom, the poor old devil, I mean, you just charge the same for everything. So a domestic house, you charge 300 a year. A big hotel, you charge 300 a year. The idea of differentiating on the risk, or you mightn't even try to talk about. I mean, I have a degree course in quantitative methods and principle of costing, or the learning curve, or if you're making tables in a factory and you have 10 people employed and someone comes in and they want you to make chairs instead, you just can't charge the ordinary amount for 100 chairs. You have to have the learning curve, and there's mathematics for that. Now, I making an equation for wind farms is something I have applied my mind to now. But see, nobody listen. I've done this 1,000 times, and I've showed you how they're all a scam anyway. But so the only one was there off the coast of Wicklow. Was it Dodder? By God, this would have been, I just can't think of the name of it. It was off the coast of Wicklow anyway. It's been decommissioned. That's the only wind farm. There's no wind farm being built at all. There's no wind farm under construction. The poor devil, he's spaced out. He's a liar too, but he sees nothing wrong with this. They just get this buzz, you see, and that's it. So he's wrong on that. That's a lie. Now, he says his neighbour has solar on the roof. And now, I'm not against solar. Put up all the solar you like. But who has the solar on the roof and no connection to the grid? How come those who have the solar have wires going into their house? If they really rely on solar, why do they need wire? Why do they need any cables? By the way, the generators down in the shops and the farm centres, they're selling like hotcakes. And when you go into the shop to buy a couple of nuts or bolts, there's gangsters outside coming up to you saying, oh, I have a clearance sale and I have an old generator. And they're trying to sell you 1.5 price. I don't know why they're allowed. Don't have anything to do with them. If you buy the generator in the shop, you'll have a make and you'll have some bit of service and all that. And many of the petrol generators, you can't get parts. They do run a while, so be very careful. Be very careful. And I made one on generators before. But it tells you about the renewable energy transition when everyone's buying generators. Big ones, sometimes paying 6,000 and 7,000. The farm centres are making a fortune selling generators because everyone knows the lights are going to go out again. Now, anyway, so he has solar on the roof, neighbour has solar on the roof, and he feeds it back into the grid. Now, the only issue I have with the solar feeding back into the grid is that we get screwed. He gets a bit of money off his bill, and he thinks he's great, but that energy is no use. It doesn't cancel out any fossil fuel energy. In fact, if anything, it makes the situation worse. So that's the response to Cochrane, Tom. But I just made a few wee notes here. You see, when you have wind farms, you have to turn off your condensing steam plant and shut it down like Money Point. And it's 70% efficient. And when you shut it down, you replace it by open cycle gas turbines and diesel engines, which is 33% efficient. So if you had 2,000 megawatts, I've just done that here, 2,000 megawatts of traditional condensing steam plant, and you convert it to open cycle, you're losing 740 megawatts just to keep the windmills above. In order to have a quick response for the windmills, you need 740 megawatts lost. In other words, if you had the proper heavy plant, you'd have so much. But if you have 2,000 megawatts of it, but when you have wind, you lose 740 megawatts of that. That's wasted. You get the point. So, and then 37% of the grid must be fossil fuel, and they do usually use diesel engines, which are about 32% efficient for that. So that kind of explains it there. Now it's complicated, and I don't want to get into it. What I'm looking at is the compilation of a formula, which is the power used. Could be about 5% over a year. The power used by wind farms is about 5% at least. Now, some give it 20%. It's a hidden secret. But I know at the time of the storm in 2009, that terrible frost, the meter was running the opposite way. The thing is, we don't know, do they charge them? We suspect they're giving them a lot of the power free. But anyway, the proper way of doing it is the power the wind farms used, and then you have to feed in so much to compensate for that to get to zero, to get to break in, right? So then that's then plus. So the amount used is a minus, plus the power fed in, the difference in slow and fast acting plant. So you only get the lower one, the lower value. So that's a cost. And then you get the cost of turning them off. And the more of them you have, the more you turn them off. So we'll say that Cochrane's Tom's dreams come true. He gives no megawatts or anything like that. And there's 2,000 megawatts of offshore wind built. Well, they'll all have to be turned off, and they'll have to be paid from your bill to turn off and produce nothing, because you cannot let the full amount into the grid. So the simplest way to remember it is that you need 6,000 megawatts. You have 6,000 megawatts. You always had 6,000 megawatts. They have big difficulty getting more or less. They have to keep that amount. So there's no turn off of fossil fuel, but you're using less efficient plant. And I'm trying to work out a formula. It'll take me a while for that. So you take the power they use away, and then you take the power they feed in. That brings you to zero. But then you have to adjust for the fact that you have less efficient plant, and then that you have to turn them off. It's millions in Scotland, millions and millions. And then you have to take into account that the amount of power they produce is only 20%. It's only 20%. Now, there's a wind farm been in for planning down in Mount Leinster, and I'm so busy I haven't time to object to them all. But down in Mount Leinster, and it's put on the planning application that will give 35% of its output. So if it's 100 megawatts, it'll give 35 megawatts. That's a lie. That's untrue and a lie. And the council and Bord Pleanála will accept it. There's one up the road in County Wicklow, the very same, and its capacity factor, its amount fed in is 20%. 20%. And they're saying it'll be 35, and that's a lie to fool people. And that's when you have no SCA done. As Cochrane's Tom does say, and I'll give him this, to hell with SCA, who needs to assess anything? You never assess anything. It's just whatever you feel like. There was a man who was an engineer and he trained in the United States in a big place. And he was telling me that there was a few old boys retired and old Yankees that was in this big place, big place, engineering. And their job was fitting and all that. But he was big, they had to do costings and all that. But he said, you never use intuition, you never use your thoughts. You calculate the data for everything. And you have to. And that's why you often see people starting up a business, like a coffee shop or something, and they think, oh, sure, sell a few coffees and that's all right. They have no concept of what break-even analysis is, what fixed costs are, what variable costs are. I did that in my course. And this is why you get the likes of these people, like poor old Coughlin's Tom, maybe I'm being too hard on him. He no education, can't count, has no idea what break-even analysis is, has no idea what fixed or variable costs. None. Just put it up and go on. Plough on, Paddy. And that's the very same attitude with the builders in 2000 that led up to 2008 crash. Can't work. So have I made that clear? I'll do a little more on it at another time. Like Rara Wind Farm, it uses about 4% in the summer anyway. I'm not just too sure, but it's roughly that. But that's enough to power 770 homes. The wind farm itself uses the same power as 770 domestic homes, right? Now, of course, it does provide some electricity into the grid, direct. But the proper scientific way from engineering schools of calculating the contribution of any generating plant is capacity credit. That's the amount of other energy that can be turned off and replaced by the one being measured without endangering supply. And that for wind is actually a negative. Wind energy is a net consumer of electricity when you count everything. And that's what has crippled German industry, crippled English industry, British industry, and has driven Ireland with the highest electricity costs in the world. And the thing about Coughlin's Tom is Wellman's International is shutting down and energy is quoted as the reason. And he doesn't give two damns. Communists are very, very cold-hearted. He doesn't care that those people are going to lose their jobs. They have families and they're trying to rear families and live in the country, and they had their grand industry there. And he doesn't care, it doesn't bother him. You see, the socialist has no empathy with the people. And even President Trump, when he was in Scotland, he says wind farms have to be heavily subsidised. Now, look at the subsidy they get. They get the highest cost of fossil fuel. Now, there's a case there the energy regulator has made. And there's an article in the Irish Examiner that people are going to get a slight reduction in their bills. Irish consumers to see lower electricity bills as levy to fund renewables to fall 38%. Now, what's happened is that the domestic amount is 201 of a reduction, and €2.01, and the business one is €7.77. That's the PSO levy, and that's going to come down a bit. We needn't give you too much figures. And our inflation has risen. But the reason behind that is that when the price of coal, oil or gas goes up, the wind energy gets the higher price and the energy regulator reduces the subsidy on the PSO levy. You get the point? So this is the huge lie. And the energy regulator is lying too, of course. They're liars as well. You see, he says it in the article in the Examiner. For households, the PSO levy is based on the wholesale electricity price. When the wholesale prices are higher, the PSO levy is lower because renewables are earning more for electricity they produce. Now, there's the proof of what I'm saying to you. I've studied this just to let you understand that again. The energy regulator watches I'll read just what he says. It's out of the Irish Examiner. For households, the PSO levy is based on the wholesale electricity price. When wholesale prices are higher, the PSO levy is lowered because renewables are earning more for electricity than electricity that they produce. So there's the proof. They link the cost of wind energy, and let's say solar, to the fossil fuel price. And that's why Eamon Ryan told such a dirty, rotten lie, saying wind energy will bring down the price of electricity. The whole thing is a massive lie. It's linked to the highest fuel in the mix, and there's the evidence in the paper. Okay? Now, I don't think we'll give you the exact amounts. And then to say, oh, when Russia invaded the Ukraine, they brought the PSO levy down to zero. So wasn't it a good thing? But the reason was the fuel price went up. So they were making a stack anyway. So do you see the way the system works? Now, so then he says he has to support the wind and solar because significant progress has been made to fight climate change. Climate change. That's the regulator. So I think there's enough there. So British Wind Energy was paid 13% to turn off its turbines. And I see another one there. In 2024, Irish Wind Energy was paid 10 million. They're trying to keep us from getting information. But 13% in 2013, they were paid. 13% of their total potential earnings. And in Ireland, it was 10 million last year to turn them off. So this is the situation. I mean, it is, how can such a scam have legs? And how can they do it? I mean, this will be the mystery. I mean, Trump sees through it a mile away. And it means that Putin can do what he likes. There's no way of making steel or anything. So it's absolutely ridiculous. Imagine that. I'll just read what he says again. For households, PSO levy is based on the wholesale electricity price. When wholesale prices are higher, the PSO level is lowered. The PSO is lowered because renewables are earning more for electricity they produce. So you're beat either way. The price of oil goes up. They have your money. It's your money they're getting. It's not the oil money. They're getting this because oil is high, or coal or gas. So they can take down the money they give to me out your bill. So they're robbing you out this side. And so the energy regulator reduces this. And then he puts it in the paper that prices come down. That is a lie. If the price of the most expensive fuel goes up, the price of the PSO levy comes down. But you're still being robbed. And then if the price of fuel goes down, the PSO levy goes up. You're still being robbed. And they put it in the Irish Examiner, a lie, that you're being saved. They just tell lies at every possible turn. I made a complaint about 2 years ago. RTE said that renewable energy was cheaper. Now, I don't know which of them was. Was it John Lee? But George Lee, I'm not sure. But anyway, I said this was a lie. And I pushed it through the whole complaints procedure. And they said it was no lie. It's the truth. You're wrong. The whole thing is rigged. The whole thing is rigged. It's a Ponzi scheme. The renewable energy, solar and wind, makes no difference. In fact, it just damages the environment. Whatever it pays in is knocked out by the stupid inefficiencies of it that you have to make it work. Do you understand? Now, hopefully we'll get a formula on it, but I don't think anyone will pay any heed to it anyway. Okay, folks, we'll see you back soon. Thank you.